Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to begin a new project and an experiment, but I wanted to also document this project that I'm doing for the next 30 days. I'm going to be undergoing a 30-day intensive cleansing and detoxification program. This video is going to be scripted, so I have some notes, and I'm just going to go through the points, so that way I'm not rambling too much, and I can get right to the point for you guys. I'm going to be doing Dr. Schulze's Incurables program. It's a 30-day program that helps people with incurable diseases, and also, as an announcement, I wanted to explain my situation. Over the last 9 to 10 months now, since my diagnosis, when I worked for my company, I was diagnosed with DD in my C5 and C6 vertebrae in my neck. There are arthritic spurs, and the disc has narrowed in size. So it used to be full and basically supple, but now it has shrunk down, as well as also having arthritic spurs in both my AC joints and both my shoulders. So my left and my right shoulder both have arthritic spurs in the AC joints. I went to a joint specialist, and he typically says that there's always just a little bit of arthritis in those joints specifically. It could also be the same concept with the elbows, the knees, and the hips. Of course, over time, that arthritis tends to get worse. But I have arthritic symptoms and arthritic inflammation in my joints. So the other thing that we found too is I also knew that I had an old shoulder injury. When they did the MRI on my right shoulder, which is where my injury was from, I've kind of kept it vague in some older videos, but I gave you guys the gist of it. I have torn labrums in the front and in the back of my shoulder. The cuff is intact still, no rotator cuff tear, as well as a 4.5 millimeter cyst on my right side of my lower lat, I believe, which would explain a lot of weird popping sensations in that kind of muscular area. I could tell it was never bone because I'd always feel the popping sensations in my shoulders, but there was always kind of a weird bump, or some muscles were being moved around or something. But typically what cysts are muscles on top of muscles is a general understanding. So I will be doing this program to help clear up any of those symptoms. When I was with my company, I believed that the movement that I was doing with my last job with my company was making things worse, and that was one of the reasons why I ended up quitting. Really, the silver lining in all of this was the fact that I now have enough time to do this program, and I would like to document and show you guys what I'm going to be going through. One of the things I wanted to mention here in this video was that I'm going to be using different cameras like the one that you're watching me on right now. I'm going to do my best to edit these, but for the most part I'm going to try and do just short clips of my documentation throughout the day, and I will try and keep them short. But they may get lengthy like this, so that way I can explain and talk about the products, the routines, and the things I'm going to be doing for the next 30 days or day by day. I also wanted to give a shout out to a lady named Leah Hodge. She inspired me to do this project. She also did the Incurables program. She is a girl from Australia, and she followed this exact same program that she did about 5 to 6 years ago now. And she was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, something completely different from what I have. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her. The other thing that was the kind of the cherry on top for like the last 8 months was that I ended up getting inflammation in this left shoulder. So speaking of a bad shoulder, I also had inflammation in this left shoulder, so it was very painful for me to move. And when I worked with my company, kept working on it, kept doing the repetitive motion, and also trying to fit 16 hours to 20 hours of work in an 8-hour shift was just impossible. but that's what the job entailed, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I left my company for this other job that I'm currently working, where I'll be staying at a family home on family property, and helping out my family for the time being. But with that being said, though, this job is flexible to a degree, and it will give me the time that I need to do these routines in herbal therapies and so on and so forth, following the diet. I'm only 30 years old, and basically my whole diagnosis has been arthritic symptoms and tendonitis. After 4 months, the pain had finally subsided in this arm, so I'm able to move it. Every other week, from what I've noticed, though, depending on the day, it does flare up, so I still have problems moving my shoulder. The biggest problem with this is that I've always lived a healthy lifestyle. I've always been really curious and infatuated with health and wellness. So I've always tried to keep my body at its peak performance, and also not be afraid to stretch my legs and try out different things. As you guys have seen me on my channel, I've also done the carnivore diet, as well as the keto diet. I've also made a playlist on my Wim Hof method journey and the workshop that I went to over in Portland, Oregon. I was a bodybuilder basically right after high school, but I'd always been an athlete all my life overall. So this is probably what's hit me the hardest, is that I have been so active for most of my life. It's always been a great outlet for me, that once I got to a point to where I couldn't move without it hurting for like the last, well, now 10 months versus 8, it's been very difficult for me to process and to adjust to. Aside from just doing yoga and stretching, mobility work, that's really the best that I could do, aside from any kind of actual like movement, resistance training, lifting, calisthenics, HIIT workouts, things like that. I've just basically been laid up. So, so the diet that I will be on for this Incurables program is going to be basically mostly raw vegan. And during the schedule in 30 days, I'm going to have to get on a 3-day basis of juice flushing, as well as incorporating hydrotherapy and herbal therapy. And there's also going to be a treatment called the cold sheet treatment, which is another intense version of hydrotherapy. And I will explain that in another video. At first, that was going to be the only thing that I was not going to be able to do for this program, and I was going to do everything else, but I now have a family member who's agreed to do who has agreed to do this with me and help me out. My girlfriend broke up with me, and I'm just going to leave it at that, but I was going to try and get some aid from her while I was staying at her place on the weekends. But now I'm just staying with my family on the weekends, when I'm not at the family home 5 days a week. So I'm going to have one family member help me out with the cold sheet treatment, and I'll talk about that in another video. So it's going to be mostly raw food. It's going to be juicing, basically daily juice. If anything, I will probably be mostly on raw, fresh juice, raw foods, and just as a backup and a filler, just in case if I run out of my raw foods, I've decided to incorporate some other plants, but they're more starchy, and things like grains. You're supposed to eat legumes, sprouts, nuts, seeds, and grains. Any kind of fruit and vegetables are allowed, but mostly raw fruits and vegetables. The main grain that I decided to choose was quinoa, so I'll be cooking that up a lot with my salads if I need to, but I'm mostly going to go with just the raw fruits and vegetables and juices for the duration of the program. Some other things that I will not be doing is no alcohol, no nicotine, and I have actually struggled with that for like the last 10 months. I ended up getting back on a product, and it was helping me with the pain, but also the stress that I was dealing with at my job. But I I don't want to rely on that. You know, who am I to be this health and wellness guru and basically have a crutch with a substance that is very addictive? I just don't want that in my life anymore. And I feel like I'm not really setting the example for my audience and for you if I'm on that product. So I would rather just be rid of it, go through the withdrawal symptoms if I have any, and experience that full on, and just get it out of my system. Also, no drugs or any kind of smoking. So no pharmaceutical drugs, no recreational